Greetings. Welcome to the How We Do Digital Ministry podcast. I'm Christopher Harris, founder of Faith Growth. You can find us online at faithgrowth.com, where we help our church clients build their digital presence and engage their communities online. On this podcast, I have a conversation with a church leader and ask them how they do digital ministry in their community. Today, I'm talking with Father Cathie Caimano, the free-range priest. Please introduce yourself, Father Cathie, and tell us how you do digital ministry.
Hi, I am Cathie Caimano. I am an Episcopal priest, and I have a ministry that's called Free Range Priest, where I help clergy and congregations reimagine ministry in the 21st century. And they reimagine ministry in three main categories, which is creative, sustainable, and digital ministry. So digital ministry is right in the name.
Yes, awesome. I wasn't aware of your ministry until very recently when a mutual acquaintance of ours introduced me to that. But I'm loving the content you're producing. I'm so excited to have you as a guest today so you can share with our listeners all things digital and what you're seeing out in the church. And so tell me, you kind of have a very unique perspective and approach to digital ministry. Why don't you share a little bit about that approach and perspective with us?
Okay. So to me, I always say one of my favorite things to say is online is like outside. And so there's two different things. It's two different ways it's like that. One way is it can mean almost anything, right? When you say outside, right, you could mean I am going to a national park, or you can mean I'm going to my backyard. Or you can say I'm going to the beach or the pool, right? Outside is a huge concept. So online, also a huge concept, but also online is a place. Our lives are actually lived in so many ways in digital spaces now. And so digital ministry is in a lot of ways about reimagination and translation of how is it that we are actually living our faith lives online, like outside. And then I think like tools and platforms and equipment, those sorts of things that help us do that. Those are like a whole bunch of, there's lots and lots of choices around how you do that, and all sorts of like thousands of ways, like outside that you could, like, if you're going to the beach, you're going to bring your bathing suit, right? If you're going to the national park, you're going to bring your hiking boots. So the things that we use to manifest that are going to depend on how it is that we're imagining how we are doing digital ministry, where we are doing digital ministry.
I really appreciate that analogy. And what I like about it is because it says, it's not about the tool. It's not about Facebook. It's not about a website or email necessarily. It's, which to me, I think there's hope in that because it means the ministry that we're already good at, in other words, sharing the message of Jesus Christ, connecting to people, living life in community, that's the same thing. It's just how are we going to do it online or outside in this case? Because if using the outside metaphor, we would do it one way at the beach, your swimsuit example, one way if we were to go hiking, I might, I'm going to put on my hiking boots and, so different tools and different contexts. But to me, I find hope in that because it means all the stuff I've learned about ministry or how to, all the things that we know as church, it still applies.
Exactly. Yeah. That is exactly true. And that's why I talk so much about reimagination and also about translation. And it's also why, for me, the ministry also touches on sustainability. So how do we support our ministry so that they continue to exist? And then also creative, right? So we have to really be thinking about doing things differently and not just taking what we do in person and then filming it, if you will. There's a time and place for that to happen, right? But also when we're in the online space, we're interacting with each other in a different way. And so how are we engaged in ministry when we're in this space that's very different than the ways that we do that when we're in person? And how do we interact with people that we will never meet in real life, but yet we have real relationships with them, and we all have real relationships with God in all of this. So so I also feel like this is reimagining church and reimagining how church can exist. And so we can reimagine things like membership, reimagine things like church giving, reimagine things, which I do a lot, is how clergy serve the church and other ministers, how music ministers serve the church, how education and formation ministers serve the church. Because if I can be talking to 100 people who are all over the globe at the same time, that changes my relationship with each one of the people and also communities that I'm engaged with. It means I could engage with communities that existed in physical space anywhere, no matter where I am. And it also means that people who are disciples can grow in their discipleship by engaging with, first of all, any number of communities, right? You can know the whole idea that we're just members of one church and we stay members of one church, and maybe we leave that church and we go to another church, and that's a big deal. Now we can be members, right, of 5 churches, 10 churches, 20 churches, depending on how we're interacting with them. And then what it means to be a member of that church changes, which then changes the whole concept of what do we think about membership? What do we think about a congregation being, or even a denomination being? And once you start doing that, it kind of explodes, but in a good way, I think. We don't have to get rid of the stuff that we're doing in person. But I think that being online with church helps us to explore the possibilities that we've never had before.
And yeah, you're right. It kind of does explode, but I find that exciting. I know
I do too.
some of our listeners might have just been a little scary, but
I know it is scary. Change is scary.
Yeah.
Discipleship is scary. I always think that we are honestly living in the same era that the people who are the first disciples are living in, right? Like, one of the things I find so exciting about this is that how much I identify with the first disciples. Of course, from a technology standpoint, could not be different, right? But this idea that we are going into the wilderness, my friends, we are creating new communities. We are on fire with the love of God and how we are sharing it. And those first disciples, they had to figure it out, right? There was no blueprint. There was no church planting guideline. There were no denominational oversights. They were people who were sharing the love of God with the technology that they had available to them at the time. And we are doing exactly the same thing, which is why I find it really exciting. And of course, it is worth noting that the religious authorities of the time, and I can say this because I am a religious authority, the religious authority of Jesus's time, they were not so thrilled about that. They kept saying, wait a minute, there's already a process for how we do this. And again, I don't think Jesus was actually saying they were wrong, right? I think Jesus was saying, look, there's this whole new stuff that's going on, right? Come on aboard. And I think that that's also a way that we can look at this.
Yeah. I think that's a helpful way, because it doesn't set it up as an either or one is right and one is wrong. It's just, here's a new opportunity, and we can go, and ultimately reach more people and more relationships.
Right. And I will say, I already told you this, but I'll say this again, that I actually serve very, very part-time as a free-range priest. So I serve on contract with a congregation that's a small town congregation of a total of 30 members, extremely old school, extremely in person, although we went online just like everybody else did during COVID time. But one of the things I find exciting about these possibilities is it allows me to serve in a very traditional, mostly in-person way with a group of people who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford a clergy person, because this is where the sustainability piece comes in, because I basically make most of my money doing this, right? And so to me, what's exciting about that is I'm supporting and absolutely support traditional congregations, and traditional, I mean by how they're set up, not necessarily what denomination or theological, but it's supporting of that. Now, of course, there's lots of small congregations that are rah digital ministry. And then there's a lot of small congregations that are like, this is a step too far for us. We just want to be where we are. But I feel like for clergy and other leaders, it offers us these opportunities for sustainability and creativity in ways that we are able to support congregations as they are, and be out there in the brave new world of the online, and be reaching people, the majority of whom in this culture, in this day, don't really know Jesus in their lives and don't really have a walk of faith that they are walking.
Yeah. Well, I think you hit something very important. I mean, we have a lot of smaller churches that are going to get harder and harder to afford full-time clergy. And so your model of how you're you're living your ministry right now, doing your ministry.
Yeah.
You're right. I think we're going to see more of it. Or people are going to leave the ministry altogether, which that's what
which
they're called.
They are, and I don't want them to.
Then if they're leaving, then they're leaving the call as well. And it's like,
right.
Here's how you can continue the call and become sustainable, and help out some of these smaller churches. I also think like you said, some of the smaller churches that are rah on the technology, because I was talking with a pastor recently in a smaller town in rural Texas. And we're the churches that are kind of, this was an ELCA kind of pastor, and the churches out there, we were talking about which ones actually had pastors on staff and could afford one right now. Mm-hmm. And then he's going, well, I really would love to set up some of this digital ministry so that we can start working more together, because this church is never going to be able to hire a pastor again. But through digital ministry, I could work with them. They could, and start doing some partnerships and being able to, have preaching every week and things like that. So I think there's just, the technology has two sides to it. I mean, it's enabling you to have a call and work with a smaller church, and then it also will enable the smaller churches to be able to network together, and have more viable ministries as well. It's exciting to me. I know
it's totally exciting. As I wrote about this, and it's true. I also do their website for this small congregation that I serve, and I asked them the other day at church. I said, "How many people do you think have looked at your website? Unique, different people in the last year and a half?" And they guessed 2, 10, 25, and I was like, almost 5,000 people, unique visitors, have come to your website in the last year and a half. So what are they looking for? How are we going to think about how we're going to reach those people? And it blew their mind. They have 30 people total when they're all there, like Easter, right? And so, but 4,500 people have passed by their website. And to me, what's exciting about that is, and I say this with complete love for small congregations, they don't want 4,500 people coming to their church. They just do not. They don't want to be that much bigger, because they really love the intimacy of that family. But what if they really pursued engagement with these 4,500 people, or these 45,000 people, or 400 more people who were digital members of that church that engaged with them in some way through worship or prayer or formation, but never came to their church? They got to keep their own pew. But that idea that there could be a digital community that is focused around this small community, I think is one amazing example of thinking about church existing online and also existing in person at the same time.
Yes. Wow. I was thinking about the possibilities there, and something that when you said, maybe participate in formation, it made me think of a friend of mine in San Antonio when they went online for COVID. They started doing a couple Zoom Bible studies, and it was interesting because they had some people that were literally Googling Zoom Bible study because they wanted to participate in Bible studies. And so they had somebody participating out of California and somewhere else in San Antonio, and they were found literally, and it's like, well, how'd you find us? Oh, I Googled Zoom Bible study.
Right. Yeah. That's right. And this also goes to sustainability, because I tell people, look, you can charge money for this, right? It doesn't have to be a lot of money. You could say our members don't have to pay to be in the Zoom Bible study, but if people come in, they pay us a small amount, $10, right? Something like that. And after a while, that adds up. For a small congregation, that could mean being able to have a clergy person, right? To bring something into their budget. And also, it's not a burden on the people who are taking the Bible study. And so it's a way to reimagine sustainability as well.
Oh, that's a good idea. I hadn't even thought of that. I like the way you're thinking.
My job.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so tell me a little bit more about, because I know you are happy to work with other clergy or other church leaders and helping them learn how to be online, or maybe establish a personal website and things like that. So tell me about that side of your ministry that's not directly with the parish.
Yeah. So I'm in the process of sort of really focusing on a few things, because at first, and especially when COVID hit, You might imagine my phone started ringing. It's not funny because of course the whole pandemic is just nothing but bad news, right? But before I started talking about digital ministry and how we could be doing it and reimagining it, when I started my ministry in 2016, and then people were like, yeah, that's a nice idea. Move on, and then COVID hit, and then I was working nonstop for a couple of months actually. And then from that, I've sort of stepped back. And so I will say that I do three major things I do. One is I do what I call creative ministry startup. So I work intensively with clergy who are ready to launch, if you will, an entrepreneurial ministry. So they want to be a retreat leader or a consultant or a coach, an author, a spiritual director or something like that. And I help them launch that as basically an online business. And so in that same way, so that you would any entrepreneur who's doing an online business. So you need a website, and you need an email list, and you need a social media presence, and you need a package, and you need to have a name for it, and you need people to understand what value it is that you're bringing into their life and how you connected them with the love of God. And then getting all that stuff ready, and also stuff like business stuff, right? Like LLC stuff and taxes and pension, if you're in a church like the Episcopal Church, that sort of stuff. And also how that works for you sustainably if you're a clergy person. And so you can do it like I do it, which I do recommend, which is what I call the creative ministry side gig, right? So you serve as part-time in a church and part-time in your own ministry. And I find that works really well for sustainability for everyone. So I do that. And as you can imagine, that's pretty intensive. And I work with people about a group about 6 months at a time. And then I do individual coaching, which is basically any aspect of that. If somebody wants to come, and it's like a 4-session package. So you can just sign up and talk about one aspect of creative or sustainable or digital ministry, and a sort of short-term coaching. I do a series of boot camps, one about every 3 months, so for a year. I've got one coming up, Hybrid Ministry Boot Camp, starts August 30th, where I meet with people online intensively for 5 days. So Monday through Friday. I discovered this during the COVID time that this works really well. We meet 1 hour a day. It's a group of people. I record the sessions so you can watch them later. And then we deal with things on a more intensive level, on the tools and equipment and platforms level, and the nitty gritty of what people are actually dealing with. So in terms of hybrid ministry, how are you equipped to and going to do in-person and digital ministry? And then there's some other ones. There's one on 5 steps to start your creative ministry, and how to work sustainable part-time ministry, because one of the big issues is people serve part-time. Well, they get paid part-time, but they're still working full-time, right? So how you got to make room, and you have to if you're going to talk about sustainability in a real and new way, we have to also admit that it's not sustainable for clergy to work 40 hours a week at 2 different churches, and then get paid $35,000 a year to do that total. And that is unsustainable for clergy and congregations, and how we renegotiate that. So, and then I also teach online. I teach a course called Practical Preaching in the Digital Age. So I teach preachers what digital technology and the digital age has done in terms of changing our relationship to worship and our relationship with preaching. So I'm just about to start that at the hybrid ministry program at Duke Divinity School, which I'm really excited about. And I've also taught that same class fully online at Church Divinity School of the Pacific in Berkeley, California, through their CALL program, which is a fully online seminary. And so that's a whole other, realm of ways in which we're reimagining ministry. So I do all of that stuff. Occasionally I do big consulting gigs, but I'm kind of scaling back on that because I need to take some time off myself occasionally.
Yeah, no, I was getting a little tired. Wow, that's exciting though. I mean,
it is.
I like all those. I mean, that's that's exciting. And so I would say, hey, listeners, look in the show notes, we are going to have her contact info, and if any of that sounds helpful to you, reach out, because I want to take some of the preaching class sounds interesting to me.
It's super fun. We use our smartphones. That's the other thing. And I've heard you say this on other podcasts, and other of your guests say this. Use the technology you have, my friends. If I think you said at the end, you're going to ask me what to tell people, and that's what I'm going to. Don't let it scare you. I have this whole thing called "Don't call the tech guy," which is not sexist because I am a tech guy, but that idea that you don't need to spend thousands of dollars to have somebody rewire your sanctuary or set you up with stuff that you don't know how it works or what it's there for, right? Digital ministry is reaching people directly with the tools and platforms and equipment that you already have. So it behooves you to use stuff you know how to use, or to like take it up to the next level.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be the level to the stars that is so complicated you don't know what button to push. And so I'm a huge smartphone advocate because they practically take you to the moon. And so you already have it in your hand.
Speaking of the moon, I mean, they say there's more computational power in this thing than the Apollo rocket.
Like 100 times more.
Yeah,
the first iPhone had like 10 times more than sent the people to the moon. Now it's like 100 times more.
And so you already have your digital ministry tool in your pocket.
Right. It takes the best pictures, the best video. It live streams directly. You know how to use it. It's app-based. It's cheaper.
Yeah, well, and I think there's some wisdom to starting with that, because like you said, you can go, and I've seen some churches do it, drop $10,000, $20,000 on new cameras and stuff, but it's this whole nother level. And it's really about the relationships. And if you're kind of learning and growing in smaller bits, and I mean, I've even put those $20,000 worth of cameras in sanctuaries, but I will say we even start, because I started live streaming at a church I was working with in Dallas almost 10 years ago now, but we even started with what we found in the church closet. There was some old cameras. And,
church closets.
That is like, and I mean, we didn't go buy. I mean, it was several years before we made that investment. We kind of kept building up, and what do we need, and how do we do it? And we literally started with a church laptop, and we found 2 Panasonic cameras in a closet and put them on a tripod in the back,
There you go.
And then we were educated enough when it came time, because this was a bigger church with some finances, that we knew what we were doing when we invested that amount of money.
Right. Tripod. So, I'm just saying I've got 2 of them right here. I never go anywhere without a tripod. Right? Get a tripod. These don't cost very much money. And so change your life.
That's very good. What are you hearing are, the people you're working with, ministers, what are some of the big questions right now that people are asking and wanting to know as far as digital ministry is concerned?
I think, honestly, one of the biggest questions is how to reach people. So this goes back actually to the entrepreneurial and to the reimagining, but it's digital. It's all around digital, which is that. So we are so used to the mental idea of a congregation is a really stable group of people that meet in a place, right? And regularly in a physical place. And so if you're outside the congregation, or you are a congregation and you want to reach people who aren't in that congregation, how do you go about that in the best way? And one of the things I talk about is the mindset of evangelism. I think often has the mindset of bring people to church, right? But what happens when we turn that around and say, bring church to people, right? Mm-hmm. And it's very hard. And people get really nervous in the whole, I don't want to be standing on the corner with a megaphone, and religion is private, and it's all well and good. Although I would also say that the digital space has done nothing if it hasn't made everything that's private a place to talk about, which is often
giving everybody that megaphone on the corner.
Exactly. About anything, about stuff, honestly, that I'd rather they didn't talk about. I'm a little squeamish, but so the idea is, so say I'm a retreat leader or a spiritual director, and I want to reach people. Like, how do I do that? Where do I find people? And then there's also this idea who want spiritual direction, for instance. And there's also this idea, I think, of territorialism, that congregations are like, these places where like the clergy and other ministers around them are like, no, these are my people, right? Like, and so you have to go through me if you're going to reach my people. And, I'm not criticizing. I just think it's all set up like this. And this goes back to the sustainability thing where all of us are nervous about losing members and money and everything else. So, but the digital world, when you're out there, right, we're all out there, right? There are no walls. So in a way, it's great. You can reach anybody. But on the other hand, you're standing there with your megaphone screaming, and so is everybody else. Yeah. So, and this gets into a lot of things about social media, a lot of stuff about, data collection and being able to, if you will, market. I know that sounds like a weird word when you talk about church, but how you're able to reach the people who want to be reached by you. This is one of the really big things that I say to people is what's great about websites in this day and age. You can see who's looking at your website, right? Literally know who's looking at your website so that you can reach out to them. They want something from you. So those sorts of connection. So how do I walk into that world? Use that analogy again. How, if I just go on the beach, right? What am I going to do on the beach? Grab my megaphone and yell? Am I going to walk up to every single person on the beach and say, hey, you want to talk about God? People do that. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't. I'm just saying that not everybody wants to do that. Or do you set up your own little space in that digital world and broadcast, and you put a sign up, right? And say people can come near me, but here I am with what it is that I'm doing. So I think that's a really big thing for clergy. And I hear a lot of clergy say, well, I'm not entrepreneurial and I'm not really in business. I'm like, this is evangelism, right? This is connecting with people, and you're really good at that.
Well, exactly. And I mean, and you use the word marketing, and I know we shy away from it in the church, but and that's just because we've seen bad marketing that we thought was manipulative. But if you get to the core of marketing is putting a message into the marketplace so people will know, like, and trust you.
Right.
So at its very core, we really do want to do marketing. I mean, what the technical definition is. And and if you're shuddering about marketing, it's probably because you're thinking of some manipulative tactic that's been used.
Cheesy marketing.
Yeah. And of course, we do not. I mean, we're not in the manipulation business. That's not that spiritual abuse. That's not health. That's not healthy spirituality. But putting a message out into the world and inviting, so people know, like, and trust you, that is healthy evangelism, if you will.
Right.
No,
yes, absolutely. And we can engage in it, like entrepreneurial ministers can engage in that, but also congregations can engage in that. Traditional ministry can engage in that. Denominationals can engage in that. And some do, right? But I just feel like that's exploding, and it's becoming so much more of it is available to sort of the average person. And I think that the church really could take advantage of that in a lot more ways, in a lot more serious ways. And then that also goes to the reimagination and having to ask ourselves, is this what we want? And I think this is a real crossroads for the traditional institutional church, because I think we have to ask ourselves with incredible clarity and honesty, is our mission to share the love of God with as many people as we possibly can? Or is our mission inside to keep this particular institution running, right? And I think that it's okay to say, look, I just want to meet with the 100 or 200 or 25 people that I love and share our life of faith together in this one place until we all die, and we're going to close the doors. And I think that is honest, and I think it's okay. But if we don't want to do that, then we have to, reach beyond. And I think that the digital space is just wide open for us to reach beyond and to help people become disciples of Jesus. And I think a lot of people want to do that. And then, but in their hearts, they're both afraid, and also this little space and this group of people are very sacred to them. And again, this goes back to doing both, I think.
Oh, yes. So we're almost out of time. So I have two questions left. So not my last question yet, but the question that I normally ask this question much closer to the beginning of the interview, but we've just been going so well. I was like, I just realized I haven't asked my one real favorite question. And I would love for you to share an example of a time you've seen God at work online or encountered God online.
Well, of course, I kind of got all the time online, because I encounter people online all the time, and God is everywhere. And like I said, it's like outside. But I will say that one thing that I just started doing, I started doing it every week a long time ago. I think almost at the beginning of my ministry. And then during COVID, I started doing it every day when we first were on lockdown. But I do this thing called 2 minutes of good news. So every Monday morning, at somewhere between 7 and 9, I'm just keep changing the time, I do a little live video of, this is basically a recap of my sermon, right? So what was yesterday's gospel, or what season are we in, or is it Christmas or whatever? And I just do 2 minutes of good news, and that's what it's called. And you can watch it, and I post it on my Facebook, and I also send it out via email. It's also on my website. And I am really, first of all, I'm really amazed that people watch it, but also occasionally people send me emails or contact me that I don't know who they are. And in fact, this is a little bit of hybrid ministry. I was literally in the grocery store and somebody said, "Are you Father Cathie?" said, I was not wearing this. I was wearing my t-shirt, right? And she said, I love your videos. And I was like, oh my gosh, this stranger, this person that I don't know who lives in my community and I'm engaging with right here, she watches me online, right? And to me, this is about God. It's like it is about sharing the love of God and sharing good news in a way that I feel like that is just one example of just millions of examples that we all engage in.
I like that. Yeah, you got spotted out at the grocery store. That is so cool. Okay. So I like that. That God is everywhere, and so of course God is online as well, especially from an incarnational perspective. Luther has a line where he said we're all little Christ, and we're little Christ to each other. And so to me, that's always this online thing is like, yeah, it's real people on this connection. Yeah, online is full of a cesspool, but offline has cesspools too, so
right. And I say that too. And I don't mean to interrupt you there, but a lot of people are like, I don't want to be on social media. I don't want to be on Facebook or, all that stuff that happens, all true. But I'm always like, what kind of neighborhoods does Jesus go into? Right. Exactly. Like if we think about this as a place, social media is a neighborhood that is in desperate need of more good news, right? That's why you should be there. You can go there and ignore the yucky stuff and be a beacon of light there. And that's where you're needed.
Yeah, I know. So how, like you said, good news, because we come into the lexicon since COVID is this word doom scrolling, which I find so depressing.
Yes.
So we need to inject good news into these feeds so that people are not just doom scrolling. They have there's another perspective. All right. So last question.
Okay.
And which I did already tell you what that was. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners? Any piece of advice or anything that I didn't ask you about that you would love to share with our listeners?
Just, keep on keeping on, right? Whatever that means. Or my stepson used to say that, keep on keeping on, whatever that means. Keep being brave in the digital world, right? Keep remembering that you are needed. I can't remember who said it, but you might be the only Bible that someone ever reads, right? There's not a lot of Bibles on social media, on your websites, in the digital world. Be in the digital world as the evangelist that you are called to be, as the disciple that you are called to be. And don't be afraid. Use what you have, right? Or take up your skill level or up your equipment level by one tiny little centimeter, but you don't have to worry about it being too hard or too technical or too scary. Just take one little step in that direction.
Awesome. Well, okay.
And sign up for Hybrid Ministry Bootcamp on my website.
Yes. The link will be in the show notes.
Yes.
Well, that is all the time we have today. Thank you, Father Cathie, for being our guest on How We Do Digital Ministry. Make sure to follow and subscribe to our podcast wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching the YouTube video, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Father Cathie, how can our listeners find and follow you online?
You can find me at freerangepriest.org. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. at Father Cathie, or I have a Facebook group called The Future of Church, and you're more than welcome to join us there.
All right, and we will include links to all of those in our show notes, which are below this recording. So once again, thanks for listening today. We would love at Faith Growth to connect with you in other ways too. We have a private Facebook group that is cleverly titled How We Do Digital Ministry. So it's a place where you can join other church leaders and discuss all things digital ministry in the other 6 days of the week that we do not have a podcast episode. So the link is in the show note as well. We invite you to please come join the conversation. Until next week, I say peace and blessings to you all.